The GF 80mm F1.7 was announced earlier this year for the Fujifilm digital media format system, and it felt like it was supposed to be a mic drop moment for the company. The world's brightest autofocus lens for digital medium or large format cameras. Those are the first words you'll read when you pull this lens up on Fujifilm's website. And luckily, the lens performs exceptionally well in the field, where a tagline like that doesn't feel like hyperbole. I've spent the better part of a year using this lens across various shoots, and in that time, it has gradually become my most used lens for my Fujifilm GFX 100S. You see, this lens has an equivalent focal length of 63 in the full frame perspective, and prior to 2021, that's just uncharted territory for me. Most of the work I capture tends to fall into 35 or 75, with the 50 being a distant third place. 63, that's just an odd spot to be in, until it wasn't. I began using this lens like a 35 in that I would shoot it a bit further back and build a scene. Whether it was a concept on my shot list for a project or just an idea in my mind while I was abroad, I would start with this lens much further back to capture a bit of an establishing shot. After a few frames, I would then move tighter, and look to really fill the frame, with the details being the primary story of an image. It was this ping-ponging between two perspectives that really began to underscore the value of this uber prime lens. And after all these months across several cities around the world, it was this process that has led me to believe that this lens, this GF 80mm f1.7, is the second best lens for the Fuji GFX system.
But God might be on vacation, and the promised land ain't never promised. My baby telling me to be patient, but the devil always working overnight, my darling.
This is a formidable piece of glass at nearly 800 grams. It's definitely something that just pulls your camera forward and forces you to wield it with two hands or a tripod. It's something that feels completely opposed to the philosophy of lenses on the X-mount system, and it should. I mean, what is the GFX system if not the complete opposite of what the X system values? This lens is built incredibly well, where the seals and gaskets meet in a near perfect manner. The lining on the focus ring is generous, and the rubber material hasn't frayed in a way that cheaper lenses might invite. There's a good amount of resistance on this manual focus ring, and given the wide diameter, it's something that you can use effectively to pull subtle shifts in focus. The aperture ring has a decent amount of resistance, but not enough to prevent you from bumping it out of place. There's also a button on the far end to lock this into an auto mode or command mode, where you can allow the camera to decide the aperture or use the command dial respectively. Now, I'll get to the image quality in a minute, but I have to mention the weather sealing because of its impressiveness. Not just for rain, but even in incredibly dusty areas, this lens held up incredibly well. I don't have any particles infiltrating the glass or gaskets, and while that's to be expected, the truth is not all weather-sealed lenses are made equal. This design instills a sense of confidence, where you can go to a seaside environment where salt is being thrown around like a cheap buffet and not flinch once. Altogether, the lens is built in an intentional way that's meant to last regardless of where you decide to take it, which is great because when you see the images that this thing produces, you'll want to take it everywhere. What would you expect from a $2,300 lens made in Japan? Great pictures, and that's what you get with the GF80. Images have a healthy amount of sharpness to them, where the corners when shooting wide open begin to fall off slightly. Push this thing to f4 and those concerns are pretty much gone. You can create fantastic compositions that are tack sharp edge to edge. It's also important to consider that this is a lens that can resolve a 102 megapixel sensor with stupid accuracy and clarity. You can punch in and easily catch the damn follicles of your subject if you wanted to. You shouldn't, but I mean, you could. Okay, back on subject. After using this lens for some time, you easily realize that there's a reason why this is an expensive pairing, because it has to rise to the quality of the sensor it's projecting an image onto. I'd even venture to argue that this lens can easily resolve an image sensor with twice the resolution, which is pretty damn crazy to think about. The look of this lens is special, and it may have to do with that slight trade-off in sharpness made at the wider apertures. The optical elements in this lens work together to give you a pleasing image that feels natural and not like a bucket of extra crispy chicken. And as you move into the out of focus areas, you see an even and predictable fall off that should impress any professional photographer. You add to this the clean colors that are pulled where things don't get muddy as you punch in, and you have the making of a powerful tool that can help you further differentiate your creative look. Now, that's plenty of great things I had to say. Let's move on to some of the drawbacks I found in this lens. The main thing here that might bother some shooters is that when you're in a high contrast situation, when you have a dark subject against a light background, when you're shooting wide open, you may experience some purple fringing. Personally, I found this to be an issue when you punched in 100 or 200% onto an image. If you stop down to f2.8 or higher, you pretty much eliminate this, but it's worth noting in case, I don't know, you want to shoot wide open on high contrast environments and crop in 200%. The autofocus in this lens is good, don't get me wrong, but the move to use a DC motor instead of a linear motor means that it does lag behind some of its GF counterparts and can be noisy at times. This may not matter in most environments, and in my opinion, something that you simply adapt to and work around. Lastly, and this isn't a drawback, but the 63mm equivalent focal length is an interesting choice. While this range may have some value in the history of medium format imaging, I would have liked to see something a bit tighter, like a 75 equivalent. I'm sure some of you diehards will disagree with me, but hey, that's what makes the internet a beautiful and stress-inducing death trap for the mental health of billions around the world. And on that positive note, let's move on to how this lens stacks up against its closest competitor. This is going to be short because I made an entire video on this subject, the 80mm F1.7 versus the GF110 F2.0 for the GFX system. These two are arguably the closest competitors that consumers will consider, and which one you choose first will ultimately come down to the nature of your work. The 110 is unequivocally sharper and faster to focus. That being said, the tighter focal length, steeper price point, and overall design that resembles a long-range missile, the GF110 F2 will better suit professional creators that rely on that perspective. For creators with more dynamic subject matter or enthusiasts that just want one solid option, the 80 F1.7 would be a clear winner. It works exceptionally well, where the marginal differences between this and the 110 are not going to feel like a deal breaker. The interesting thing is that if you're someone that is capturing images in well-lit environments, there's a suite of primes and zooms that perform just as good, if not better, and at even more affordable price points. Lenses like the GF63 or 50 can absolutely perform in a street and travel setting and do so in a way that feels more ergonomic. The reason I say this is to remind everyone watching that you really should consider how valuable that F1.7 is to the work you do. While many individuals may tout this as a game-changing feat, holistically speaking, it's not. It's something that can be inspiring, but just as easily a crutch that holds you back as a photographer. Before I get to my final thoughts, I want to give a shout out to the team at Moment, who have been absolutely killing it lately, from some of the more popular Fujifilm gear to courses to presets and so much more. They've curated an amazing selection of goods with their ridiculously easy to navigate website. What makes this even better is that they have a group of guides that can connect with you in real time and help you find exactly what you're looking for. If you're looking for that last minute gift or just want to splurge that holiday bonus on your own self, visit shopmoment.com to find the gear you need and learn from the creators you love. Earlier I mentioned that this is the second best lens on the Fujifilm GFX system, and that has more to do with what this lens is than what it does. This thing is brilliant, and though it may feel like a sawed-off shotgun at times, there's no denying the fantastic image quality it delivers. However, the perspective here is a bit of a generalist. For most people looking to invest in the GFX system, I'd recommend getting something more specialized for what you're capturing, and then consider this 80 in addition to your kit. That is to say, when you're starting off, you may get a bit wider or tighter or a zoom that can bring you a ton of value right away, and then make this 80 the next item in your kit that complements your solution. Or, and this is also a viable solution, you can skip this lens entirely. Look, it's easy to get caught up with the hype of all these new products, and I have to be careful with these videos. Most of these I feature products I own and use, and it may convey this rhetoric that because I use them, you should too. That's simply not the case, and I'm hopeful that most of you watching can see that. Since the beginning, these reviews were about qualifying products for the right people, not clickbait for the sake of cheap views. So let me end this video with a simple reminder. Look at what you create, where you create, and how often before you invest significantly in any new equipment. your journey as a creator will be that much better for it. And there you have it. That is my review of the 80mm f1.7 for the GF mount. I am enjoying the heck out of this thing, this big burly beast, and I'd love to hear what you guys think. So be sure to let me know your thoughts on this lens in the comments below. Is it something that's on your wish list? Is it something that you're just gonna skip? Or is there something else that's occupying your wish list? Let's continue the conversation down below. As always, my name's Gadgen. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.